I want to begin these brief wrap-up remarks by first thanking the Institute of Politics and Heinz Endowments for the opportunity to gather for this important discussion, and specifically Aaron and Sam, and most importantly Mark Nordenberg. We all know what Mark did for the University of Pittsburgh and in the process for the region. Mark, you could have done a lot of things, including just rest on laurels. The fact that he chose to focus his attention on something like this makes us all the better, and we really appreciate what you've done in that regard. Also want to thank Stanley and Danielle, Michael and Liz, and Judge Littman, who had to leave earlier, for their great comments, and leaving us with the thought, where do we go from here? What's next? Well, I think we enter this work with our eyes open, and we've heard some things to keep our eyes on. That there are disparities in the system, embedded in the system, especially racial disparities, and to dislodge them will take intentionality and work. That this is not just about reducing incarceration, but it's reducing the effects of generational impact on things like health, education, employment, and the status of neighborhoods. That there's no boogeyman or a silver bullet, that there are issues in the system at every single stage, and we can't lay the blame in anywhere in particular. That advocacy matters, that we need to walk before we run, but the good news is there's a lot happening in Allegheny County already, so I think we're already walking, and it's time to step it up a bit. That now's the time. The judge was pretty clear on that. Our crime rates are at the lowest they've ever been. The economy's strong in Allegheny County. We don't want to lose this opportunity. As we do this work, we have to remember it's not just about programs, and it's not just about jail. It's the front end, and it's how we have a credible plan to change systems across the board. How we police, how we process individuals, how we use bail, and how we use probation. We have to realize there are perverse incentives in the system that need to be changed, and the importance of a unified effort that includes the cross-section of all our stakeholders to participate. And lastly, at the end of the day, it ends and starts with language. A common understanding of who we are, and where we're headed. The data is critical to the effort, and we have great data, but it's also important to remember the humanity that's involved in this, that this isn't just about numbers, it's about real lives, and it's about real people who are impacted and also have a voice and have stories to tell us. And finally, it's a false narrative and a false choice that we're confronted with. It's not a choice between public safety and reform. We can have both. And as Michael was so useful in pointing out, you can't have less enforcement, less incarceration, less crime, and still have advanced public safety. So as different as New York is from Pittsburgh, we have learned that changing the system is possible and that we can think big, not 10%, not 20%, but 50%, 60%, 70%. And that we don't think about it as changing the criminal justice system, we think about it as improving economic development for our region. So where do we go from here? Well, in this initiative, we're committed to further advancing our partnership with the county by working with the courts and criminal justice professionals to explore opportunities in our county regarding diversion, creating a more fair and equitable system, and the usages of space within our jail facility. We expect these efforts, starting today, to include not only additional convenings such as this, but a deeper analysis of the journey through the criminal justice system in Allegheny County, from arrest to release, and to obtain that data to understand how individuals are impacted both in general and specifically with regard to subgroups such as race, age, income, gender, socioeconomic status, and disabilities. We hope to use the results of this analysis to identify any disparities within the system, especially those connected to race, to research best practices locally and nationally for reducing any such disparities, and to encourage implementation of these best practices, as well as assist in the search for additional resources for any such implementation. Second, as we explore best practices with regard to data and racial disparities, we'll explore best practices locally and nationally for both formal and informal opportunities to divert individuals from the criminal justice system where treatment or remediation is best referred to resources within the broader community. And lastly, as Liz has given us a vision of a jail in New York City that's smaller, fairer, safer, we intend to engage in a more practical inquiry into the system, properties, and design of the Allegheny County Jail here in order to identify opportunities for better space, utilization, and programming. We expect such an inquiry will include considerable input from a broad range of stakeholders with differing perspectives of the jail, and we hope that all of you will join us in that. And lastly, each of these specific actions that we'll begin to undertake will be undertaken, as always, with a focus on 4 key overarching themes. First, and most importantly, of improving equity and fairness within the system. Second, to have true partnerships with the courts, the criminal justice professionals, and the community at large to achieve these. Third, reducing costs where possible and reinvesting them into the system, back into the system where practical, especially on the front end. And lastly, but certainly not least, always with the commitment to preserving or enhancing public safety. So again, allow me to close by thanking all of you for joining us, and with a special thanks to our out-of-town guests from whom we learned so much. Thanks, and have a great day.